Preferences in CenterPoint let you customize the way certain features within CenterPoint behave. They're usually set when you first start using CenterPoint. The Preferences screen can be a little confusing to navigate, so this video will concentrate on how to navigate the Preferences screen. Preferences can be found by going to File and Preferences. On the left margin of the screen, there are different gray highlighted sections that if you click on them, actually will show different preference settings within that group. If a group has more settings than can be displayed on the screen, you'll see a down arrow that you can click on that will scroll to additional preferences. In the top left side of the screen is a search box. If you are searching for preferences, let's say I'm searching for preferences having to do with reports, you can type that into the box and it will display those preferences that relate to what you have typed into the search box. To clear the search box, you can click on the X at the end of the box. I'm going to click on Accounts, and I'm going to click on the first preference underneath Accounts. When you highlight a preference on the left, there's going to be a series of tabs that display on the right. This is where we're going to set the preference. The first tab that shows up is the Current Settings tab. And the Current Settings tab is showing us what the current setting is for that preference, whether it was one setting that you set or whether it was the default that Red Wing had set. Now, since you can set a preference at multiple tabs, this becomes important because if I set a preference at both the Application tab and the Database tab, how do I know which one it's using? The Current Settings tab will always show you which one it's using. However, the way that the system works is that if you set a preference at multiple tabs, it's always going to be the tab to the furthest to the right that of the preference was set at that is going to be used. It's going to be the more specific setting, and moving towards the right is more specific. The Global tab is a tab that is used in very few organizations. So like I said before, Red Wing does set up a set of default preferences, but some organizations with lots of users would like to have a different set of default preferences. So we would have them set up those default preferences and point the other machines to them, and that becomes their global preference. If you're interested in that, you can contact our support department to help you set that up. The Application tab is set very frequently, and that is setting a preference at your specific computer. So if you're on a network and you have multiple users that have their own computer, you can set up an application preference that is specific to your computer, and somebody else using a different computer can have a different setting. If you set a preference at the Database tab, it's going to override any application setting, and it is specific to that database, but everybody who logs into that database would have the same setting, and it would override their application tab. So different databases, though, can have a different setting, but it's specific to that database. The User tab that you see as disabled here is only enabled if you also enable security within CenterPoint. When you set up security in CenterPoint, you're going to set up each user with their own user ID and password to log into the database. And if you set a setting at the User tab, then it is specific to that user logged into the database. And it will override the database setting and the Application tab setting. Now, in certain instances, we may gray out a tab. We're going to gray out a tab when we don't feel like setting the tab at that level makes any sense. There are some buttons at the bottom of the screen. The first button to reset the defaults would just allow you to reset the preferences back to the defaults when you first installed the software. The clear button, if you just set a preference, like let's say I make a change here and I set this, add a digit to this particular preference. If I do that and I decide that I don't want that, I can click clear and it'll clear out that preference. So I can then reset it to something else. The save button would save your preference, but it also closes that screen. So it's important to know that you don't need to hit save in between each change. If I make a change on a particular preference and then go to another preference, it does do an automatic save. So I only have to hit the save button when I'm done with all of the preference settings. So hopefully that helps you to navigate the preferences screen. If you need help on any of these preferences, you can click on the help button on the bottom right-hand portion of the screen.